I was about 20, 21 maybe, playing tenor on a gig. Elvin Jones showed up. He came up to me after and he goes, man, I was digging what you were playing. Because come and sit in with my band on Monday night. I didn't go anywhere near that place. I was so scared. And now I'm like, I regret. I've never had the opportunity since to play with Elvin Jones. Say yes to things. Yeah. Even if you don't feel like you're ready, just do it.
I caught up with Ted Nash at the Gen Conference in Atlanta for a wonderful conversation about jazz, the saxophone, and priceless lessons learned over a lifetime, committed to making beautiful music. Ted is best known for his long tenure as a member of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra under the direction of Wynton Marsalis. I am sure you're going to love our conversation. Ted Nash.
Good to see you, Jay.
Great to see you.
Yeah, man.
We're at the Gen Conference in Atlanta, and I was just listening to Soundcheck. You did a presentation earlier today.
Yeah.
And then you got some performances going on during this this event. And I didn't catch all of your presentation, but when I walked in, you were talking about improvisation. So maybe we could just like jump in there, and you were talking about just strategies for leaving space, communicating with the rhythm section, and maybe you could just talk about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I can expand on. I mean, the concept of the workshop we did was really how to find intimacy in a small band setting. I mean, the goal of all the work that we do, I mean, we work on all this stuff, right? Harmony, technique, our sound, all these different things, and how we express, how we find different ways of playing our instrument. And the ultimate goal is to just forget about everything and just be in a moment, right? So like, we're also trying to create a situation where we can just be 100% involved with the musicians that we're playing with. And so if we come with an agenda, let's say, or we have an idea of what we want to do, like impress people with a certain thing, it always gets in the way of the actual musicality of just being in the moment and being true. And a lot of that comes from, well, we can learn it when we're younger, but it tends to come when we're older because we're more mature. So we've developed a lot of extra abilities like trust and commitment, negotiation, communication, different things that help us communicate to the people we're playing with what we're feeling, what we're thinking. They can respond in a way that helps boost our engagement with the rest of the band. And then hopefully, the end result is that the people who are listening can be moved by the experience because they're paying attention and being affected by all the choices and all the things that are happening spontaneously in this smaller band, right, on the stage. And for me, that's the highest place to be with the music. Like that's the goal, not to impress people with how many licks that I've mastered or all my harmony or whatever like that. It was important to me when I was younger, because that tends to be a youthful thing. But now things have shifted, and that's kind of not the goal, right?
Well, I find, I love hearing you say all of that, because I find it so fascinating that as you do get older, you have this mindset shift where different things become more important, and the things that come with maturity actually then start becoming part of the way we play music. And what's also interesting about what you said is, when you have the audience, even if they're not a musician audience, they can understand so much more of what you're communicating because it's more on the adult level rather than the, So I find that fascinating, and I've been really exploring this, in my own practice and my own playing, and it's really rewarding. And it's interesting because it's one of those things. It's hard you can tell these things to people. You could tell your students these things, younger people these things. Yeah. But I wonder, is it something that only comes as we get older, or what do you think about that?
I think a lot of it has to do with maturing, and not just in music, but in everything that we do. How we respect other people, the choices that we make around other people, and how we live our life, and the things that we do that affect other people. When we're younger, we're really more involved with ourselves. We're more ego involved. And so a lot of the choices and the things that we do are centered around ourselves and us getting what we want. And as you get older, you start to realize not only is that not as important, but it actually it's a negative characteristic of how we are. So, I mean, there's just like, everyone wants to be young, right? It's like there's all these things that you can do and Botox and creams to put on. And everybody's trying to be 20 again. Yeah. I think it's more superficial than it is about our souls or whatever. But like, if you'd asked me if I want to be 20 again, I'd be like, no, I'm so happy to be where I'm at.
That's interesting.
Because at the age I'm at now, I'm able to do things that I couldn't do back then. And I don't mean physically, like emotionally, you know? And so we have to embrace getting older, and we want to stay in good shape. So like I say, if you're going to be reaching your 60s, start to work out, you know, don't eat as much, don't drink as much, whatever it is, so that we can be in a good place and be in good shape so that we can do all these things for a long time. So aging is really about getting better. For me, that's the idea, is that as we get older, we understand life, music, ourselves much more deeply, and to embrace that as that's happening. And I think that's why some of these musicians that I play with, like Ben Allison and Matt Wilson, who you saw today, I mean, I'm in my 60s, they're probably around 60, right? So they're not kids anymore. And to play with them is such a pleasure because they get it. They understand. We have similar goals in that we're not trying to play all our bad shit. We're trying to engage in something and have a conversation and hopefully inspire people. Grown-up stuff. That's it. Grown-up stuff. I love that.
So you bringing this up, like taking care of yourself as you're getting older. Now, is this something that, like at a certain age, you had to say, you know what, I need to change my lifestyle a little bit so that I can be in good shape, or is this something you've always done?
No. I think at a certain point in your life, as you develop, I mean, every decade that goes by, you experience different things in different ways because of who you are and how you've changed. So at a certain point, you get to a place and you're like, oh, all that stuff I was doing, the way that I was impatient, the way that I was ego involved, the way that I treated people when I was a certain age. And I don't mean like, you know, hitting people or abusing people, but just not with the kind of respect that we can have for each other. And I think we can do a better job as teachers, as parents, to deal with our kids when they're young and help them understand certain things. Like in school, like we learn, you know, English and math and history and all these things, but are we taught how to communicate with each other, how to respect each other, how to make decisions that affect people in a positive way, like just basic things that it could take us until we're 40 or 50 to say, I was approaching life all wrong. I was thinking it's all about me when it's really about a community, let's say. We're never going to get away from looking at the world through our own eyes. I mean, our perspective is through us. So, but we can learn a lot about how to bring in other people and how to, I don't know, just respect everybody as everyone, because we're all out here trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to just live our lives, and you know, and I don't think we deal with that enough with younger people. So it is a personal journey for most people, and some people will find spirituality or different philosophies and things to read and get to it, or some people find it naturally.
So this is one of those things as jazz educators or music educators that I guess we like to think that through teaching music, through learning music, young people have some sort of advantage where they are hopefully learning some of these things, this extra communication skills, this ways of working together and respecting other people that maybe you don't learn in math class.
Yeah. All that stuff's important. I mean, because young kids will say, oh, wow, and get turned on by math and then become mathematicians or do something where math and engineering and things like that math is very important. So it is important that we in school are exposed to all these different things. I just think there's more that we can do with young kids to expose them. So as they grow and try to navigate through this crazy world, they'll be better equipped, better armed to, you know, to deal with things as they come. And sometimes it just takes a while to learn that. And then applying that to music, it's the same. It's just, it's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's also, I'm very happy to hear you talk about it like that. Because, you know, when we're learning music, learning how to play the saxophone, it's a very long-term commitment. It's a lifetime commitment. And
Yeah.
it's great to kind of get the different perspectives and to just hear, someone like yourself talk about how the perspective evolves over time and how you're still, thinking about, how can I, adjust things for where I am now and embrace, getting older. And maybe you could talk a bit more about like anything you might do different. Do you approach your practice sessions differently? Has that evolved or things like that?
Yeah, no, such a great question. And I mean, we're always trying to grow. And that growth doesn't necessarily mean that every few years we can recognize that our technique is better. Although, I mean, I clearly want to have more technical ability than I have. And that's not so that I can just play a zillion notes. It's so that I can get to things that I'm hearing and that I'm feeling. And maybe as you start to hear things and understand and conceptualize certain lines in the way of playing through chords and things like that, you need a certain technique to be able to do those things and be able to follow through on your ideas, right? So technique is really important. But I think I was so happy. I was so excited when I discovered certain things about chords and scales, like how on an altered, chord, you can use this scale and these notes, and oh wow, look at all those triads that you can create by that. And then it's like, ooh, listen to how that goes against the root, so all that stuff was very, very exciting. So I would just play all that, like, ooh, just play it. I'm satisfied enough by just playing those things because I was so excited about it. So that's pretty natural. And now it's more the tool, it's more the fuel to be able to do the things that I'm hearing in the moment, rather than just those are the things. Like that depth of understanding of harmony isn't the goal. That's to help you get to the goal, right? Do you know what I mean? So like, I know I kind of went off a tangent a little bit, but when I'm practicing today, I mean, I could say, all right, am I like I happen to have my saxophone because we just came from this rehearsal, but like, yo, what's up?
Doing, man?
Cyrus, what's happening, man? How you doing? Hey, man, Cyrus Chestnut in the house. Woo, yeah, love it. So like, and I was just thinking about how like, okay, you have like A minor 7, D7, G, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat, and then B, E, etc. You have all these things, and so you work on all your licks, whatever you might do. I mean, if it's like, all those kind of things where you do like patterns through, and you think what you're doing maybe is getting to this place where you can play all those licks, you can play all those keys and treat them all the same. So what I'm kind of discovering now is how beautiful it is that A flat on my horn is darker and kind of has a warmer thing, and the fingers move differently. So I choose different patterns of notes as I'm playing. So I'm not trying to play the same pattern on every chord structure or every tonal center, but embrace the things that might, like the E flat on this horn, it requires me, especially on this one, which I don't use very often, this Mark 6, to open up and drop my jaw a little bit and create, and then all of a sudden I get this bigger, warmer sound on the E flat, which I'm not going to get as much on the E. Because on this, I got to lip up a little to match the pitch. So, but what I love is that B flat to E flat is a different thing than B to E. It's not just, oh, it's a fourth. It's just in another key. No, it's like, that feels different. So as we learn a song that goes through different keys, like you take a tune like Chelsea Bridge or something, and as you get to certain keys, you're like, oh, I love C minor. I love the way that B natural up there. You know what I mean? Like you think about that instead of just trying to play the same licks through all the keys. And I think that's something as I get older, I'm embracing more the idiosyncrasies,
Yeah.
right, of the horn and what it creates in the sound, and then embrace that. Then it feels musical, not mechanical, I guess, is what I'm trying to
That's
say.
a great
Does that make sense? I don't know.
Absolutely. No, that
Yeah.
totally makes sense, because we learn and we also teach things like, okay, take this through all the 12 keys and make them all sound equal. I mean, that's just the way we kind of approach something from the beginning. And it is, I found myself kind of trying to be less rigid with myself when I practice, like, okay, I used to practice always the metronome and and I said, you know what, maybe don't play with the metronome to then allow that, okay, this, this key, I'm going to have to slow things down, and that's okay. It doesn't all have to be the Olympics of, you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, that speaks to me, your perspective on that. During your presentation, I also remember another thing you said that I think is great to talk about. You had said that you had played a solo in, I think it was South Africa. It was the worst solo you ever played. And I'm sorry to remind you of it, but because you brought that up, I think that, first of all, that's so powerful for people learning to hear that, great players are go through that same conversation in their mind, like, oh, I blew it on that one.
Yeah.
Because even at your level, at every, as far as you go, you're still going to have to deal with, the head game of it.
Yeah.
So if you could talk about that, that'd be great.
Well, it's so important because I think especially when we're younger, we're judging ourselves a lot and we get really upset at ourselves. I remember times playing gigs or even practicing where I wanted to throw my horn across the room because I just was so upset that I couldn't do the thing that I wanted to do. And as it got better, then that happened a little bit more in live gig situations. Remember, I used to play with Louis Bellson, drummer, in a quartet and quintet setting when I was in my early 20s. And he would play tunes like, and sometimes I just couldn't play that fast. And I would try, we'd play Cherokee, we'd play something, and I'd be so mad that I would carry the frustration and anger into the next set, through the break, maybe to the next morning even. And what good is that doing anybody? I'm bringing this negative energy to the bandstand. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to feel certain things. We do feel certain things. But I think the main thing is to try to figure out how not to get angry at ourselves and not to feel that. The time that I mentioned earlier and that you're bringing up was a situation where we were in a really great jazz festival in Johannesburg. And it was the first time that I was there, and there was just such great cultured people from all over, and then we played this gig with the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra, big stage, big crowd, and I hadn't soloed on the set. And Wynton Marsalis, our director, he'd look around and be like, oh man, so-and-so hasn't played a solo yet. We're getting to the end of the set. So he goes, oh man, Ted hasn't played on something. So the only thing left on the set was Braggin and Brass, which is a Duke Ellington, which is super fast, and I've never played on. And it's something that Wynton usually plays on, and he just tears it up with his technique and his just fluidity through the thing and all that. He goes, Ted, play after me. And I was like, okay. I think I brought it on because I was sort of dreading it. Because a lot of times in the big band, you can't hear the drums. Like I'm way over here on the side of the saxophone section, and we got all these people in between, and I can't, fast tempos, I can't hear the clarity. So there's all this stuff that leads into me not liking to play fast tempos on a big band. So I said, oh, no problem. I'll come around and I'll stand in front of the rhythm section. So I did that and got out there, and just as my solo started, the drummer dropped out and just left Carlos Enriquez and me playing. And then Carlos started playing, instead of like root-oriented stuff, he just started playing some random kind of stuff. So I was like, wait a minute. It sounded like Charlie Hayden trying to swing on some old like 20s music or something. It was like, I got confused and I said, all right, I'm not exactly sure where I am. So what do I do? So I just started playing out. Like I just made this choice to just start playing like some crazy, I was overblowing stuff and playing some harmonics and stuff. And then I could finally find where I was, and the rhythm section came back in, and then they were just swinging real traditionally, and I felt like I'd set up this whole thing that wasn't, and then I got back into the more traditional way, and then it was like I wasn't making these choices that made any sense. Then the solo ended and I walked away and I was like, oh my God, that was just such a mess. But it was also an experience. So as I look back at it now, I'm like, maybe certain choices and things that happened, I could have maybe had more control over. Maybe I could have listened more carefully, or asked, or turned around to the drums and said, "No, play for me," or certain things that I could have helped to keep it together. And then if it doesn't go well, hey, it's just now. It's this solo, this night. Tomorrow's another day. people understand the humanity of what we're doing. I've heard people that I really respect not play well, and I don't say they're not good players. I say I heard what they were dealing with. I heard they had a rough time on that, and it's okay,
It's okay.
right?
It's interesting, listening to, recordings of, our heroes and our favorite players. There's always this evolution. For most people, you can kind of hear this evolution, and it's so important to remember that everybody is human. Even, our immortal heroes, they were still humans.
Yeah.
And we need to. It's definitely an important lesson to learn how to forgive yourself for not living up to whatever your expectations were in every single moment.
Yeah, and I think that word expectation is extremely important to understand, because expectation means that you think something is going to happen specific that you are trying to create. And if you come with expectations on the bandstand, in personal relationships, and everything we do, we are often disappointed, because expectation leads to disappointment for the most part, because things aren't exactly what you think they're going to be, right? So it's better not to come with an expectation of, and an expectation could be anything. It could be like a specific thing you want to accomplish in a solo, or getting house, or playing really fast, or getting that double time thing out that you wanted to get out on the second course, or whatever like that. Those are things that take you away from being in the moment, right? Expectation. So it's better to come with trust, openness, and willingness, and then just trust that all the things that you've worked on, and how you can play in time, and how you hear the harmony, and how you can listen to other people, are going to happen when you get up on that and take that solo. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to be that way, but you have a better chance of making music if you think that way.
So is that, maybe you can expand on that. So do you try to get yourself into a specific mindset of no expectations, or of, like, maybe you could describe that, like, okay.
People want to learn something, and they want to gain insight from people. And like, you could just do a couple TikTok videos or whatever, you might get some likes or you might get some views. But when you do something like you're doing it with a commitment and consistency, it's so great, because then you really develop a following of people who want to check it out. And as long as the quality is good and you're consistent about it, that's the important thing. What a great example about sticking with our music. Like, I don't know, there's so many people who are like, I don't know, should I be a musician? Should I be a musician, right? Like, if you're asking that question, you're probably going to struggle with a commitment throughout your whole life. And it's hard. It's hard not to be 100% in from the beginning.
Because even when you're 100% in, it's still really hard.
It's really hard
to have any success. Yeah.
And it's scary, and I understand why people aren't sure about doing it.
Yeah.
You look out there, you look like, are people struggling? Are they making a good living? Are they able to do things? Is there respect for what they're doing creatively? And you do it because you don't have a choice. I mean, you feel this thing and you want to do it. And usually with that kind of commitment, you'll find a path for yourselves. And that's the important thing. If you really are passionate about it, and you can recognize that you do have the talent and the ability, it's great to just go all in, because you're going to find a way to do it.
When you leave yourself no other choice, you're going to find a way to do it. But
right?
If you listen to your, maybe your mom saying, "Well, you need some backup," if you listen to that, or the voice on your shoulder saying, "Get up."
Yeah.
Then, so it's interesting. Music, it's kind of like a risk. I mean, it's like a lot of other things in life. You can't be, you have to be willing to take the risk. Otherwise,
Right. And I think a lot about, like, I've just left Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra for 26 years. And my replacement, who just came in few months ago is Alexa Tarantino. She's a fantastic young alto player, flute player, great vibe. She's been my sub for the last couple of years. And as I've moved away from the orchestra, she's been doing a lot of the gigs for me, maybe a third of the gigs like in the last year. And I'm so excited about it for so many reasons. First of all, it's a young person coming in the band. I've been there a long time. It's time for some youthful energy and someone with a youthful perspective. And it's also a woman, and Jazzing the Center Orchestra has never had a permanent woman in the band. We've had a lot of different women play in the band and do tours or be in the band for a couple of years, that kind of thing. But this is the first time that a woman has had a permanent place in the band. And I'm so excited about that because I think with the teaching that I do and going to middle schools, then you go to high schools, colleges, you see the amount of girls or women who are involved in these programs get smaller and smaller. The numbers get smaller and smaller as they get older because they start looking around. They're like, look at what this is. It's such a male-dominated art form. Is there room for me? Is there a place for me? And women have typically struggled over the years in this kind of macho sort of male-dominated art form. And I think it's changing. I mean, it is changing because we have so many fabulous women coming over the years into it. And I think she's going to be such a great example for young girls to say, I can do this. Because I think a lot of young women say, I don't know if I can do this. And not because of their ability, but because they see what the deal is out here. I think with her now representing, with all the exposure that Jazz Lincoln Center gets, it's going to be really powerful.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, I recently, or I guess last year, I did an interview with Camille Thurman. And we talked about this line. She told this whole story about her experience as a woman and, some of the darker side of things that happened to her. And so it was really interesting. And yeah, you'll have to put me in touch with Alexa so I can do an interview with her.
Oh, you absolutely should. She's got such a great bubbly personality. Yeah.
Maybe we could shift a little bit. Earlier, after the sound check, you were telling me about this Mark VI Alto that you. Well, tell us about this horn and any other gear things you want to talk about.
Well, it's weird because I don't think of myself as a gearhead in the sense that I'm constantly trying different mouthpieces and equipment and stuff like that. But
hope that wasn't a good.
I might be trying a new reed later. That's what, But it was funny because I had this Mark 6 years ago, and then I went into the studio to record a record of mine called Chakra. No, I'm sorry. It's called The Creep, and it was a very kind of Ornette Coleman inspired music without a piano, without a chordal instrument. And I brought in my Mark 6, and I brought in this $150 Japanese Vito from the 70s, which I had started playing. And I brought it in and I recorded a little on each to see, and the Vito just sounded so much better on the recording, like more clear and compact and all that. So I said, we always think that we have to have these expensive horns. So that started me on a whole thing where I started investigating Vito, and I realized that Vito is just a name, right? It's not a company. So in the old days, Frank West had a Vito that was owned by Johnny Hodges, and it's one of the most beautiful horns, made in the 50s. And I have a couple of those. But the Vito that I fell in love with is called a Transitional, and it's made, I think, around 1960, and that's been my main horn for a long time. So with that said, it's got I've been playing it, it's got a very clear and compact kind of sound. But when I'm playing lead alto, for some reason, I always want to play a different horn. So in the last 3 times that I've played lead alto in a big band, I've just decided to play this Mark VI. I don't know why. It's a weird thing, but it's like we were talking about key centers and how it gives us different feelings. I get a different feeling from a different horn. So I might bring a different horn to a different setting, just so I have a different, and it's not like it changes my personality, but it just gives me a little something different that makes me feel kind of differently. I mean, I've been messing around and changing horns so much over the last 10 years that you could put pretty much anything in my hand, then I could play it on alto. I just,
Because people are usually one way or the other. They're usually like, I need to play on my
yeah,
setup, or I can play on anything. Just
yeah.
But it's good. To hear you say that, because that's one of those things. And it's a luxury to have multiple horns. Not
That's true.
everybody has.
No, it's true.
Lots of horns, but it's also it's nice to be able to look at it that way. Say, yeah, we can explore what. It's not so much about, oh, this is better or this is better. It's about they're different. Maybe this one is better for you. Maybe this one's better for you. Maybe this one's better for this situation where I'm at right now. And rather than this is the best, or and that sort of attitude.
Yeah, and some people like cons, let's say, like old Chewberry cons, and that's just like Walter Blanding that's what he goes to. Or some baritone players would rather play an old con than say, a Yanagisawa or whatever. Then you're exactly right. It's like what do you feel good on? What do what's important for you? I like quirky horns. I like horns that have some, I wouldn't say imbalances, but just things that give it a little character. So that's always been a thing. As I move away from jazzling center orchestra, I'm also moving a little bit away from the alto. So even though the alto is the horn that I've probably played the most professionally, it's not my favorite. Like the tenor really is the one I like the most.
Interesting.
And so that's the voice. Like whenever I record my small band records, I have that trio with Ben Allison and Steve Cardenas. I play tenor. I don't play alto, but my uncle was a fantastic saxophone player named Ted Nash. I was named after him. And he was in the Les Brown band and played tenor in that band and became kind of known as a soloist. I saw a downbeat from like maybe early 50s or late 40s, and it had the pole, had the pole?
Right.
And my uncle was number 4. Number 3 was Lester Young.
Wow.
So it was like he was at this kind of pivotal place of like deciding whether to be a soloist and more known as a jazz player or a commercial player. And he chose to go into the commercial route, the route, because he wanted to raise a family. He wanted the steady income, and he wanted a nice lifestyle. That was him. So he moved to Los Angeles, settled, did all the studio work, made a lot of money. And when he went into the studios, he switched to alto because he liked playing lead and he liked getting flute as a double or piccolo. So that was usually on alto chairs, right? Just kind of funny, but I think about it, a little bit of reverse how I'm going. But his tenor that he used for the last few decades of his career was called a Jimmy Dorsey model. And it's a Selmer.
Right.
And the body is a super body, and the bell is a balanced bell. And they just made 200 of them, and they put these pieces together that were, I think, kind of laying around because they couldn't get brass because of the war. It was made in the early part of World War II. So they made like 200 of these Jimmy Dorsey models, and then they started doing their balanced actions. But that was his horn, and I got that when he retired. So for the last 30 years, that has been my main tenor. This is like probably more interesting to me than anybody else, but
no.
All of a sudden, I just didn't feel the horn anymore after 30 years. I wasn't feeling it was giving me the sound I wanted, or the technique, or the thing, or just the feeling. And I've been on kind of a search, and I found a silver-plated 82,000 serial number Mark VI factory silver that I'm really digging. It's a little thicker sound, and it's more resistant. I can play louder on it, I can project more on it, but I'm still trying to find myself in terms of the sound. Just sort of interesting. So I'm in this little weird place right now where I'm looking for a sound.
Did you, with your musical family, did you end up inheriting lots of different instruments? Or?
That's funny. Because you think, oh, I got an uncle in the business, right?
Right.
And my dad, one day I was visiting LA. I had been living in New York for a few years, and I was in my mid-late 20s, I don't know. My dad he said, oh, Uncle Ted's retiring. I said, yeah, I know. He says, well, he's selling all his horns. I said, oh, really? He goes, yeah, you might talk to him to see what he's got left. So I called her. He goes, yeah, I sold my alto. I sold the flute. I sold my whatever. He sold a bunch of stuff. I said, what about that tenor? Because I had borrowed it once. He goes, no, it's over at the repairman's. He's selling the horns for me. So I went and grabbed it. And that was the horn. That was the tenor.
Okay.
So And so I called up my uncle. I said, so, what do you want for it? Thinking he'd be like, come on, take it. He goes, yeah, I don't know, whatever. He says, literally, he goes, whatever market value will be fine. I was like, thanks a lot, uncle.
Okay, so you bought it.
Yeah, I did. I bought it.
That's all right. Okay. Well,
Hey. That was who he was. He grew up in
Market
the, he grew up in the, in the Great Depression. There's a certain sort of attitude that people had who grew up at that
It
time.
was still a good investment. I don't know what you paid for it back then, but I'm sure it's worth more now.
No problem. That's funny.
Let's touch on like one more thing. And
Yeah.
I kind of knew that Alex was in the band,
Yeah.
but I hadn't made the connection really that you were leaving.
Oh,
I don't know
see.
why. So when you just said that to me, like you're leaving or you've
No, I've left the band.
left
Yeah.
Amos.
Yeah.
So that was like news to
Yeah.
me. So I was like, oh, okay. Because as long as I've known about that band, like you've been in it, I think. How long did you say?
26.
26 years, yeah.
Yeah. Not from the very beginning, but, a handful of years in. Wes Anderson played lead alto. And in the beginning, Sherman Irby played second alto. And Sherman left to play with Roy Hargrove's band.
Right.
And I saw him, I ran into him at a festival, and he was like, hey, man, you've always sounded good when you came in and subbed in the band. You should let them know, because I'm leaving. If you want the gig, maybe they want you to do it or whatever. So I called him up, went and whatever. I said, hey, man, if you're looking for somebody, please consider me. And a few months went by, and then the executive director at the time just came down to the Village Vanguard where I was playing with Marcus Roberts. He just came in and go, hey, man, let's rap. I said, yeah. He goes, we want you in the band. So I said, and then he told me what the commitment was. It was like 35 weeks a year of touring and playing and all that. I was like, wow, it's really going to change my life. It's going to be a complete shift from what I'm doing.
It's like a full-time position.
Yeah. And I was like, absolutely, and I was not playing the alto at the time. I was like, I would subbed on the alto because you get called, oh, do you want to come and sub on a band with Wynton Marsalis? Well, I'm like, well, yeah, let me do it. Yeah, I quit playing the alto, but let me pretend I'm still playing the alto.
Right.
So that was kind of my vibe. No, let me come in and not just experience this and play. And then kind of gradually got more into the alto again and kept saying, man, but I'm really a tenor player, and people are like, but you're playing the alto, why, and I realized I was running away from it. Because, I was running away from the instrument. I was playing it, but I was like, it's not really the horn I want to play.
Right.
And then at a certain point, there was a turning in me, and what am I doing? It's a beautiful instrument. Let me just embrace it. Let me try to play it. And that led to doing the record I did called The Creep, where I only played alto, the only record I've only played just alto on. And I'm glad I did, because it's so great to play different instruments and find your voice and the color of that instrument. They're unique. The tenor and the alto are such different instruments. Yeah. They give me a different almost personality, and that's a little schizophrenic maybe, but I think it's why you don't see a lot of people doubling on alto and tenor. You see them doubling on baritone and alto, or alto and soprano, or tenor and soprano, or something, but you don't see often.
Right. Now, do you think that's more about, just B flat, E flat thing, or more that they're, because you could make the argument that Barry is kind of just like a big alto there's certain similarities.
Yeah.
But is it more about E flat, B flat thing, or is it more about something that's just an alto tenor thing?
I think B flat, E flat is a thing.
Yeah.
Wes Anderson, when he played soprano, he actually played sopranino because he just wanted to stay in E flat, right? And then the tenor players who double on soprano, that's easy. No, for me, it's like a personality thing.
It's character.
Yeah. Think about alto players, and I think about Cannonball and Phil Woods and Benny Carter and Ornette and all these different great players. I think of a certain kind of way that you need to get the sound. It has to be bright, but not like overwhelmingly bright, but like have a certain core, but also sing and have a certain thing. And you have Hodges and you have all these players. So and then when you play tenor, that's different,
Yeah.
and the players are different. Train and Cole and Rollins and Hank Mobley and Stan Getz and
Right. And the sweet spots on the horns are different
they're
places.
so different.
Yeah.
I like that, the sweet spot. You're right. It's a different. But what I liked about the tenor, why I kept gravitating towards it, is because I felt like you could have a more personal sound, a different sound, and be accepted. And I felt like alto, kind of mostly all striving towards the same sound, which is an old-fashioned idea because Kenny Garrett and a lot of other people, and Tia, right? I mean, come with this kind of a different approach to the sound. And there was Sanborn who had a different approach to the sound. So. Paul Desmond. I mean, you could say, well, that's not true. There were so many different ways to play the horn. But for me, when I pick up the tenor, it's like, ooh, I can play warmer. I can open up a little bit. I can get darker. I can be fluffier and get more air in the sound or whatever. Right?
Play different things. You're not going to play the same way on alto. Interesting.
So going back and forth was a little difficult. That was why I quit the alto for a while, because I wanted to focus on one thing. Anyway, but that's I think that's one of the reasons why people don't play both.
Yeah, and I think, well, I mean, just my own experience, I find, you really need to commit, like kind of like what you're saying. It's, like, are you going to play with whatever one, you have to commit to it, to find your sound and the way you're going to play it.
Yeah.
It's not automatic, I just pick it up and.
Right. No, it's so true. It's so true. And sometimes it's hard to go back and forth,
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels fresh, but sometimes it also feels tough. Like finding the voice that you were getting to, and now you've walked away from it, and now you're coming back to it. But anyway, the thing is, I love music, and it doesn't matter. You put something in my hand, if I can be part of something that people are playing and engage with some great musicians, I'll play flute. I'll give you whatever. Give me some play. I had to play in Marcus Roberts' band and tour for a month, and I played almost all clarinet. And I was like, I felt like I was pretending to be a clarinet player for a month, and for the recordings that we did. But the end result was like, whoa, I actually dig the clarinet.
Yeah.
I never liked improvising on the clarinet. After that, I was like, oh, I kind of like it.
Right.
And it got me to do it more. So, man, just if someone calls you for something, just say yes. Say yes, say yes, say yes. And I say that because sometimes people say, come and do this. And we say no. And we say no for so many different reasons. And we talk about fear, not feeling we're ready, these kinds of things. Say yes, go experience it. Maybe you're not ready. I was about 20, 21 maybe, and I was playing tenor on a gig, and Elvin Jones showed up, and he was in the audience. It was like a daytime thing at like the Drum Center or something in New York. And he was just sitting there, and he just came up to me after, and he goes, man, I was digging what you were playing. Because come and sit in with my band on Monday night in New York. Just come and play, man. Pat LaBarber's in the band. It'll be great. Have the two of you playing together. I didn't go anywhere near that place. I was so scared. And now I'm like, I regret. I've never had the opportunity since to play with Elvin Jones. Say yes to things.
Yeah.
Even if you don't feel like you're ready, just do it.
I absolutely love it. And I love hearing these stories from you. And I've been in the same situation where someone asked me to sit in, one of my heroes, and total terror.
Yeah. Right.
But I've told myself, don't listen to that scared voice. And for exactly that reason, just go up there, and it doesn't matter what happens, because you'll never forgive yourself for saying no to these things, and no, that's not the way forward. You gotta say yes and muster up the courage to go into those situations.
Because if someone doesn't hear you, they're not going to call you. Now, if you show up and you play and you think it was sad, maybe they won't call you, but maybe they will. Yeah. So you're actually in a better position to play, even if you don't feel ready.
Well, the lesson I took away from that is that you go into those situations when you're terrified, but then the next time you're a little less terrified, and the next time you're a little less. And if you never take that step, you're always going to be terrified. You have to kind of face your fears at some point and do it.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, this just everything surrounding playing and being a
Yeah.
player. It's very personal. It's so deeply personal, and that's what's beautiful about it too.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that the people we're playing with, everyone's human, and they all understand. So be kind to yourself.
Yes, everybody is a lot more is judging you much less harshly than you're judging yourself,
That's
like
so
as
true.
a general rule.
Yeah,
And that's one of those really difficult lessons to learn, but so important to be able, especially to put, well, really for any kind of music, not just jazz,
yeah,
but especially jazz, because you're really just putting yourself out there in
Yeah.
such a way
you're right.
that we just don't do in life.
You're right. You're putting yourself out there. Yeah.
Wow. Let's leave it there because I
Yeah.
think that's a great place to end.
Well,
To be
thank you. Thank you
continued.
for talking to me.
Oh man, thank you. I really appreciate you making
Yeah,
the time.
man. Great.
It's been fantastic.